This episode is for anyone who wants to be successful, inspired, and maybe in need of a little tough love. Alexis McCloskey is a tough love coach helping individuals simplify their business and better their life through systems, consistency, and unapologetic confidence. Basically, all you need to know is that she is the person that is going to help you become aware of the things that are holding you back and help you discover the habits, lifestyle shifts, and structures that you need to put into place to soar and thrive. She also specializes in entrepreneurs that have ADHD. So if you are somebody who either has been diagnosed with ADHD or think you have it, I guarantee you will feel so seen in this episode. I was like kicking Lucas's foot at everything she was saying because he has ADHD, and I just understood him so much better after this episode. We talk about how to be successful with ADHD, what the symptoms are and how it can manifest in different people, the recipe to building a successful business and online presence, divorce and her experience with it after 18 months of marriage. And we also talk about food, of course, but Alexis is also going to give all of us a little tough love. If you like this episode, please be sure to leave a rating and review because it really helps our show grow. Now, let's get into the episode. This episode is brought to you by Hooch Booch, a better for you buzz. Inspired by the Prohibition era of the 1920s, Hooch Booch is bringing you both hard kombucha and a non-alcoholic electrolyte elixir meant to hydrate you after daring to go harder, not doing it harder. My absolute favorite is
it hard though.
My absolute favorite is their Lounge Lizard, which is what Alexis is drinking right now. It's their take on a Paloma, which has notes of grapefruit and sage. So if you go to drinkhoochbooch.com, you can use code RECIPE and get 20% off of all beverages and your merch. Also, if you go to Blind Tiger, if you're local and you live in Denver, you can use code RECIPE for 20% off of a drink and all merch as well, which you'll see me wearing, and it's really literally everywhere around here. That's drinkhoochbooch.com, code RECIPE. Cheers.
Shout out Hooch Booch. Alexis.
It's fire.
Thank you so much for joining us on What's the Recipe podcast this evening.
So excited.
We're super stoked to have you.
Yeah.
So let's kind of start from the beginning, right? You go by, or your title is a tough love coach.
Self-proclaimed.
Can you sort of explain in your own words, like, what does a tough love coach do for somebody? And what does your day-to-day look like when you're working with your clients? What does that entail of?
Yeah. So my business has shifted in many different directions. Like the tough love piece has always been there. I started as a vegan recipe page. I was mint chocolate vegan.
So the food does go back for you.
It does. That's how I started. Yeah. Technically, I started as a holistic health coach, and there's like more to the beginning of my story, but mint chocolate vegan. And then I switched to mint chocolate paleo because I was just figuring all my shit out. Am I allowed to curse?
Yeah.
I figured.
But as one does, the vegan to paleo, it's like I so resonate.
Yeah.
And mint chocolate because that's your favorite ice cream flavor?
It is, yeah. It is. That cookie dough and mint chocolate are the best.
Cookie dough is the jam.
It's pretty fire. But so I did that, and then I got into holistic health coaching, and then I did fitness and nutrition.
Did you do IIN?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I did that as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people did. Yeah. There's like so many different ones now, but
it's definitely a gateway drug.
It is. Yeah. It is. And so like did the holistic health thing, and then I realized that, and I'm going to bring all this to a head. Sometimes it takes me a second to land the plane, but it all makes sense at the end. But I realized with like my nutrition coaching and things like that people were coming to me for nutrition, they were coming to me for fitness, and I realized that when they were struggling with something to implement, instead of just giving them another fitness plan, instead of giving them another like nutrition plan, I was like, okay, well, why is it hard for you? Why is this not working? And so when I realized that and I was digging deeper, that's when I wanted to get more into life coaching. And then I kind of got into business coaching, but the tough love piece has always essentially been there. And my goal, and I talk about this on my podcast too, I want to redefine what tough love means. I think a lot of times, and everybody has their different kind of tough love, but for me, my tough love is, I say this a lot, successful people have honest conversations with themselves. 100%. And so I think that the tough love is telling people and helping them realize like the things that they know deep down, but they don't really want to admit. Yep. And that's more so what I'm doing. I'm not a drill sergeant. I'm not out here like David Goggins, just like screaming at people, like, get your shit together.
17 miles and then we're going in the cold plunge.
Exactly. Like on a broken ankle.
Right.
But yeah, it's just like, to put it in a nutshell, it's like helping people have honest conversations with themselves. So a lot of what I do is life and business coaching. I consider myself kind of a 2-for-1. You don't just get business coaching with me. You don't just get life coaching. We do a little bit of both. And but I mainly work with like ADHD entrepreneurs. And so and this is like where I get a little bit of like resistance. But like with ADHD, sometimes we can use it as kind of like a crutch where it's like, oh, I'm just stuck this way. And so that's where tough love comes in, where it's like, okay, yes, your brain works differently. That's 100% a thing. But you also have habits like keeping your phone in your hand while you're working your business. Like you can't do that.
Are you talking about my husband?
If it's a distraction, like I always say, like, this is the biggest tip ever you'll ever hear. Put it in the other fucking room.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
But then I won't be able to see it.
Exactly.
You know, then I won't be able to scroll.
Like, so it's like those little things. And like, I help a lot with all things in like business and life. But one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people come to me for are like habits, consistency, discipline. I'm like a pretty disciplined, consistent person.
Right.
And then authenticity and like uniqueness, because it can be a little bit difficult to stand out on social media. So that tough love comes in with the habits. The tough love comes in with like, show up as your authentic self, and don't like people become a coach and all of a sudden they like, hi, I'm a business coach. I can help you with your business. And it's like, just talk like we're talking here. You don't have to like be like, you're really good at that on, you know, social media. And I think people just need to embrace how they would sit and talk with their friends. So
for sure.
Yeah, it's like a little.
So with the disciplinedness and also your ADHD, I want to go there too.
Mm-hmm.
Were you always a disciplined kid? And then also, like, when did you get diagnosed with ADHD? Was that early on? Like, talk about how you were as a kid that translates to how you are now.
So I always talk about this with my mom. I was never like the bad kid who was like throwing house parties or like drinking, you know, at like 11 or something. I was the kid, and because of ADHD, because I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was 15.
Okay.
But I definitely had it like from the get-go. And I was the kid where my mom would like ask me to go get something in the house, like go upstairs and grab this. And she would have to like grab my face and be like, Alexis, grab me the red shirt. Right. And I'd go upstairs and grab like the blue pants.
Right.
And so like,
you go upstairs and be like, why am I upstairs?
Exactly. Every single day, all the time. And so I wouldn't necessarily say I wasn't disciplined. I more just struggled to figure out like how to find that. But I think I innately had it because it feels very innate in me now. I'm also a Virgo. I don't know if you're into astrology, but like Virgos
When's
are
your
like
birthday?
September 12th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our sun is the 17th.
Okay. So you Virgo too?
Yes. And I'm a Virgo
it.
rising. So I feel like I really connect with Virgos. Like I see them, I get them.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So yeah, the Virgo in me like helps me stay like really organized and whatnot. But the reason why I like to help people with it, which is anybody that becomes a coach, they struggle with something, they figure out how to not do that anymore, and then they want to help other people do that.
Then they're like, yo, I want to make everybody's life that much easier.
Yeah,
right?
That's like how I got into like holistic health coaching. I like had a health diagnosis that made me like finally take my health seriously, and then was like, oh, I feel better. I'm healing myself naturally. Let me help other people do that. So same with ADHD. I started my business with no business background. I went to school to be a high school history teacher. So
You did?
yeah, that's what I was supposed to
So
do.
you wanted to be a teacher?
Yes, I wanted to be a
But
teacher.
specifically history?
Yeah, I love
History's
history.
the
Like,
shit.
I always
history's so
skipped
cool.
history.
Love
Yeah.
history.
I always went to grab lunch and Dunkin' Donuts.
What? I mean,
hated
I
history.
feel like the best teachers were always history teachers.
They're
and
always the
that's-
coolest.
Yeah.
That's what people who become teachers typically have, like that one teacher that makes them want to become a teacher. And mine were always history teachers.
Got it.
So that's kind of like where I was. But yeah, I don't even know how I got off on that tangent, but we're here.
But as a kid, did ADHD affect you before you even got the diagnosis? Like,
Oh, for
talk
sure.
about how it affected you. And then I also want to talk about maybe the symptoms that made you get diagnosed. Like, I want to know the whole process because I feel like it goes undiagnosed all the time.
Oh, it's very undiagnosed. Like, I can't tell you how many people over the age of 40 come into my DMs and they're like, I finally got a diagnosis. And they're like, I don't know, what do I do? It's like,
Yeah.
and this is another thing that I think splits the room, can be a little bit, people probably aren't going to like me for what I'm about to say. But I truly believe that ADHD is a trauma response. I don't believe it's like as
Something you're born
genetic.
with,
I think
sort
it
of?
can be genetic, but I think it's a
I like
trauma
that.
response. And there's a lot of
That
reasons
is what I
why.
was gonna ask you.
Let's talk about that. I love that. I think that's really important. But that whole quickly on the undiagnosed thing, I think the older I get, the more adults I surround myself with. I mean, I'm an adult now, right? The more
You are, I think.
I think I am. The more conversations I have with people who are like, hey, I think I have like this thing, but I've never been diagnosed. Because when you're a kid, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to go and do it. Like I was literally getting chicken wings with my buddy watching the UFC fight nights like Saturday night. And he was like, I think I have like autism. I think I'm somewhere on the spectrum.
I think
and
I'd
I want
have
to
it
go.
too.
Yeah. And like, I want to go get diagnosed. And I think that's a topic that we should talk about more because it's super good to know about yourself.
Yeah.
I think that it kind of unlocks a lot of answers to questions people have like their whole life.
Yeah, and the thing with like, because I talk with people with ADHD all the time, and I think one thing that with that whole like, there's a stigma around it and whatnot, but I think a lot of people are afraid to get the diagnosis. Not everybody feels this way, but sometimes they're afraid to get it because they think if they get the diagnosis, then it's going to be a crutch and they're
Right.
going to like lean on it.
True.
But I'm like, you can allow it to be that way, or you can get the diagnosis, learn that you have it, and then figure out how to manage it. You don't use it as an excuse. And that's where my tough love comes in. Yes, your brain is different. Your executive function, like they've done one of my favorite books, if anybody's like looking to improve on their ADHD 2.0 is one of the best books on ADHD. It just helps you understand yourself a lot better. But in the book, they talk about if you look at brains of people who've had strokes, brain injury, traumatic brain, like anything related to that, their brains and ADHD brains look similar because there's certain parts of the brain that just don't turn on. It doesn't function properly. So it's not just like I can't focus and I, lose my phone. There's like things that are going on in the brain. But the reason I think ADHD is a trauma response, one from my own studies and the, readings and things like that, but when the brain is developing, like when you don't even have a full frontal lobe until you're 25.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's like the thing that helps you understand that you have consequences to your actions.
That's why I had a quarter life crisis when I turned 25. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, my brain is different.
Yeah, it's very different. And so when you have a kid who has like a maybe abusive home, or they are going through things, there's a lot going on, their parents are getting divorced, maybe they have a single parent, whatever it might be, like while your brain is forming, there are things that are going on that are traumatic to your brain. And so why would a kid be able to focus in school, remember things, be good with time, not lose things, if they know when they go home it's chaotic?
Right.
And so like that, repetitive traumatic environment, whether it's trauma with a big T, trauma with a little t, like there's ranges, that's going to have an effect on you. And anything else that you go through, like even like I recently went through a divorce, and I study a lot of neuroscience in the brain. And there's a book I was reading about the brain, and it said that divorce specifically has not just like obviously the mental effects, but like physical effects on your brain in the same way that it does losing a parent. And so like there's certain things that kind of, just to not like get super into it, there are like certain like things that like break off physically in your brain when you go through a divorce, when you go through anything traumatic.
Right.
And so like if that's going on for a kid when their brain is developing, of course certain things that are supposed to be functioning, like your executive function, which is focus, memory, things like that,
Gaps occur.
Yeah, of course your brain's not going to develop the same way as someone who has a loving parents and they're there for them. So and that's why you'll have people who are like, I don't remember struggling in school when I was a kid, but I got diagnosed later on. But then when you check and you see, well, what happened recently? They're like, oh, I lost my parent. Oh, this happened. They went through an abusive relationship. So people might be getting late diagnosis and they didn't as a kid because maybe
Right.
they didn't have it as a kid because it's a trauma response.
For
Not
sure.
necessarily. I do think that there's probably some genetics involved in it as well, but that's more so my opinion of why.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
your
it's
theory on it.
Yeah.
Which I love. I think it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, so for somebody, even me, I don't really know what ADHD is. So could you explain like what that is, maybe in your own definition?
ADHD, the simple, it's not like a kind of straightforward answer where it's just like, this is just like the one way that it is. But the main thing that, we focus on is like executive function. Executive function in the brain is like when someone doesn't have ADHD, they're pretty good with memory. They're pretty good with focus. Like you can get off track, but easily get back on. They're good with time. And so executive function in the brain affects, those systems. And so people with ADHD, that executive function, just the lights aren't on, And so everything when it comes to, people with ADHD struggle a lot with procrastination. We also have something called time blindness, which is like, easiest way to explain it is if you have two people in a room, one person with ADHD and the other person doesn't, and somebody walks in and says, hey, we got to leave in 30 minutes. The person without ADHD is going to hear, we have to leave in 30 minutes. The person with ADHD is going to hear, we just don't have to leave right now.
Right.
And so your concept, so you're like, oh, I have time. And so 30 minutes will go by. It feels like 5 minutes because of your time blindness. So it's like things like that. And there's so many other things that like affect it, but your brain just, and I always tell my clients, like, don't say you're broken. Like your brain isn't broken. It's just different.
Right.
And so if you know yourself, if you know, like to eat better, to get sleep, to like know, one of the things is and this is for anybody, but if you work out or get exercise in before you have to do something that you need to focus with, your brain will focus better if you exercise before. So just understanding yourself in that way can help you manage that better. But I would say, like, this simply put, it's like the inability, or in the book he says people with ADHD have a Ferrari brain with bicycle brakes. So a lot of people think that like we're not smart. We're actually, that's why a lot of like entrepreneurs, CEOs have ADHD, because we're the creatives, we're the artists. Like
Absolutely.
we're able to really think outside of the box. We're problem solvers, but and the last thing with this is ADHD, even though it's called attention deficit disorder, it's actually not a deficit of attention. We have too much attention, but we don't know how to control it. That's the issue. That's the Ferrari brain.
Don't know necessarily where to aim it.
Yes.
Right? Where to, like,
That's, we have a million ideas. We can't pick one. We're constantly like coming up with like,
for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You keep looking at me like, this is you.
Is this you?
This is you. This is you.
Have you read Paris Hilton's book?
I haven't, but I listened to or watched her like YouTube documentary, and I'm like fascinated by her. She's so rad.
Did she talk about ADHD in her documentary?
I can't remember. I feel like I watched it like 3 or 4 years ago. I was just like, she's so smart.
So she,
so smart.
In her book, I mean, I want to say the first, I don't know, like 50 pages is all about her having ADHD. Okay. And she talks about exactly what you're saying. It's not that my brain was broken. It's that the boxes I was being shoved in didn't work for me in my brain. And now she's obviously this mogul, this empire. And it was just so cool to read. I always say I can see kind of my kid maybe having ADHD. He's just like so freaking everywhere. But that's so interesting. So you were diagnosed at 15. What did that diagnosis do for you? Did it change anything?
In the moment, it just made all me and my mom and my family go, oh.
I'm sure the awareness is, it's like probably pretty relieving. Like, it's kind of the closure that you need to sort of move on.
Yeah, I think you can have that more when you're older and you can kind of conceptualize, because like my parents didn't really know how to handle it, and they just immediately put me on medication, which I don't blame them. That's like what a lot of people do who don't know. And I feel like nowadays people are trying to be a little bit more educated on it, but I was on Concerta for 10 years. And I will never, and I tell my clients, because some people feel bad about like needing to go on medication. Everybody's different. It's like same people with depression.
Right.
Not everybody needs to be on depression medication, but some people, that depression, again, it's not just like this thing in your head. Like there are things that are going on with how your brain functions and your hormones and whatnot. And so when I got put on it, I remember all of my friends said it, my parents said it. They were like, because I'm very like, I'm an introverted extrovert. A lot of people think I'm extroverted, but I'm introverted. But like I'm loud. I'm a big personality, and like I'm me. I'm Alexis. And so when I was on the medication, like everybody was like, "You're a zombie. Like you just don't seem like yourself." And so I was on it for 10 years, and like I didn't eat. I lost like 25 pounds in like 3 months. It was insane. So I think the diagnosis just made us go, okay, it's not just like Alexis is like wild and crazy personality. Like there's actually something, going on. But like, and again, I don't blame my mom, but like she didn't do anything to like educate herself more on. And I talk about this with like when I recommend people read the book ADHD 2.0. Obviously, like to manage your ADHD, you need to become a student of your ADHD. Don't just say I have it and then that's it. Like learn about it. If you had diabetes, you would need to learn how to manage that. It's the same thing with ADHD.
Or you'll die, right?
Exactly.
That's actually, I love that point. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Would you say a lot of your clients that you work with, a majority of them have ADHD?
I would say majority of them have a diagnosis, like, definite, or a lot of them will say, I haven't got a diagnosis, either because they just haven't gone out of their way to do it. Sometimes it could take months to get the diagnosis or like set up the appointment. So I'd say like maybe 60 to 70% have it.
Right.
Another like 10 or 20% think they have it. And then some people just don't. And I work with people that, don't have ADHD, but there's also something that has come up. I guess I could say it's evolved in the last few years, especially with technology and social media, called VAST. It's variable attention stimulus trait. And it's for people who have a lot of the commonalities of ADHD, but not enough for a diagnosis. And it's rooted in social media, the constant information that we're getting, people scrolling on their phones. So it's like, it's creating symptoms of ADHD, but people don't actually have the same exact brain as someone with ADHD, but they're still struggling with lack of focus, struggling with a lot of these things, procrastination, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you, what are maybe some of the symptoms of ADHD for somebody who might be listening who isn't diagnosed but think that they have it?
Yeah, so there's like the obvious that we already talked about, like, time blindness, focus, procrastination. And there, I also, when we think about like the symptoms, I don't only want to focus on the bad, because people with ADHD, like, we have a superpower.
Right.
Like, we're really creative, and
you're also sensitive.
Yeah.
I feel like, because you're also such an empath. Like I think people with ADHD are very, like you were saying, they are paying attention to everything.
Yeah. No, there's in ADHD 2.0, he talks about that too. A lot of people
like a natural,
with ADHD
like,
are empathetic.
intuitiveness too.
Yeah. We just have this like radar because, again, even though we struggle to control our focus, it's because our brain is going a million miles a minute. But when you're able to, like, if you've ever, like, whether you have ADHD or not, if you've ever been like in a flow state and you're like, I'm just getting shit done, I'm fucking shit up, this is great. Like, people with ADHD have the ability to do that every day, all the time. But if you don't know how to control it, that's like where the issue comes up. So there's some things that people might not know, because like I don't really want to talk about like the obvious ones. But there's also something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. People with not everybody with ADHD has it, but it's pretty common, where we get a little bit sensitive to like constructive criticism. So like you can have a boss come in and say, hey, I saw this thing that you sent me. I need you to fix this and this. This is wrong. And they don't yell at you. We will internalize it. We'll be like, we suck. It's awful. Like, we're just a little bit more sensitive. Difference between boys and girls. The hyperactivity in ADHD typically shows up more in boys and men versus girls. Girls are a little bit more, I guess, laid back, but like I struggled with both. I was just like bouncing off the walls like a crazy person. And so you typically have a million ideas, but don't know what to do with them. So it's like, every other day we're coming up with like 7 new business ideas, but we're also afraid to, pick one because we love novelty. So people with ADHD love novelty. And
what do you mean by novelty?
So novelty is like, we like newness. We like new things. And so that's why we're constantly bouncing around from one thing to the next.
Oh my God, this is so you.
We're constantly bouncing around from like one thing to the next. And not that like I'm the first person to think of this. There's plenty of people that have done like research, but I haven't read this anywhere, but I have, because I work a lot with procrastinators, because people with ADHD procrastinate.
Right.
And I think one of the reasons that we procrastinate, I have 6 main, because I work a lot within like, I don't want to say trauma work because I'm not like digging deep like a therapist, but we connect the dots. But I think there's 6 reasons why people procrastinate that are rooted in fear. But with the novelty piece, I think that a lot of times we procrastinate because I use this example of like, when I go to work out, I work out at home. So if I'm like working, I have a gym now in my apartment, but when I lived in my house, I worked out at home. And so like I'd be working out and that's a new thing. So I'm doing that. That's fun. But like once that's gotten old, it's like 10 minutes in. I'm like, I remember I have to water my plants. And because it's a new thing to do, I'm starting to get dopamine, because that's the biggest thing with ADHD. We are dopamine chasers. Everybody likes dopamine, but with ADHD, we are constantly chasing it. So we're typically like addicted to sugar, things like that. And so it's like, oh, I want to water my plants because it's a new task. My brain gets to focus on something new. And so that's why we're constantly task switching and whatnot. So that's kind of like that novelty. But back to like the ideas is we're afraid to pick an idea because what if we pick this new business idea and I'm going to put time and energy into it, but what if I get bored and I change my mind?
Right.
So we're never really settling on an idea because it's like we're afraid if we pick one, then we're going to get bored or we're going to change our mind. So it's like a whole thing.
I feel like so many people can relate to that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think the ADHD topic is really important because a lot of people don't necessarily go there, and people are just kind of like, oh, I have ADHD, but don't do the part of actually educating themselves about it.
Yes.
You know, and so it turns into sort of just making excuses all the time.
Yes.
But I would love to just go back a little bit and really dive into the whole tough love thing too, because I feel like that's a big issue nowadays as well, where people, they don't take this constructive criticism too well. Like, I think a lot of people who have athletic backgrounds, who come from like maybe college sports, who do have coaches, they're used to that
What'd
kind of
you play?
shit.
Volleyball for 13 years, really competitively.
Okay, I was in club volleyball, but I didn't go the like collegiate route. But he played.
Yeah, but you were, I mean, you were fucking
Yeah, but he
volleyball
played-
Wait, what?
shit.
Were you a setter?
No.
Were you a libero? Or
yes,
like,
I was a libero.
Whenever I guess someone, they're either, if they're not a setter, they're a libero. I
Yeah.
can just tell.
Well, my coach wanted me to be a setter in like 8th grade, and I was like, absolutely not. Because I was still like one of the taller ones in 8th grade.
Yeah,
so I was like,
yeah.
I'm gonna be an outside hitter. What are we talking about? Absolutely
Right.
not. And then I like obviously stayed short. Everyone grew, and I was like,
Stayed
I guess
short.
I'll be a libero.
Yeah.
The coach was like, "Shorty, let me tell you something. You're not going to get any taller, so you might as well learn how to set
That's
now."
why I played Division 3, because I could have played Division 2. I had like some schools that wanted me, and I wasn't tall enough to play Division 1. I'm
Right.
tall, I'm 5'10", but like if you play Division 1, like
Yeah.
you're 6 foot and that's it. Like even
Right.
if you're
Yeah.
a libero.
Yeah.
And like Division 2, like I could have played, but I just loved the sport. I didn't really care about, like, I wanted to be competitive, but I knew if I played in a really, really good, like almost Division 2
Yeah.
but Division 3 school, and so like I played there and was like super competitive. It was fun.
Right.
But I agree with what you're
and
saying.
I played
Like
Division
athletes
2
can
football,
handle.
and it's like not a lot of people have gone through the hell of college sports.
And it's all year round, all the time. Like I played in the season in the fall, had winter ball, trained in the spring, trained in the summer. Like,
Right.
There's no breaks.
I feel like those kind of people can really take that constructive criticism pretty well.
Yeah.
But 99% of everybody else kind of tend to stay away from that kind of
Yes.
stuff.
Well, I think especially in today's day and age.
Right.
Yeah,
But then
I'm
when
very
there's
passionate
that,
about this topic, so I agree with you.
Absolutely. But then there's that
Sitting on my hands.
then there's that one person in your life, and I feel like a lot of us are that kind of friend as well, that we are the one friend that will tell the other friend like the real shit.
Yeah, and not
then all
sugarcoat
of-
it.
Yeah, and then all of our friends like gravitate to us because of it. You find that one person that is willing to fucking look you in the eyes and like hold you accountable for something.
Yeah.
Not to like belittle you. They don't take it offensively for like
to
the
better
first time
you.
in their life
Yeah.
ever, but that moment changes them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why I love that whole realm of, you know, the
Tough love.
tough love.
Because they give it
aspect.
to you straight, people. Like
Yes.
I'm like not gonna sugarcoat anything. I'm not
don't-
gonna be a dick to you, but
Right.
like I think people, like sometimes people won't. There are people that just can't take that, and I will never like. You know, I'm not going to I have clients that I have to handle with kid gloves a little bit more. They're not bad because of it, but
Right.
they're just like not built for that tough love, and that's okay. But I think that when you are that friend and you give that advice, and then even if someone doesn't maybe like it right away, they'll come back later on and they're like, you know, that thing that you said to me, it sucked when you told me
Yeah.
that, but holy shit, it changed my life. Like, I'm okay with being that person. You don't have to like me right away, but if I change your life, I'm fine with that.
Were you always like that? I know we were talking off camera about how you grew up in the East Coast. Like, does that kind of prime you for tough
Not the
love?
East Coast, the Northeast.
The Northeast.
You
It is
gotta be
technically
specific.
it's
do you
East Coast, but the
listen-
Northeast.
Do you
Yeah.
listen to Noah Khan?
It's a whole different breed.
That name sounds familiar, but I don't know.
Have you heard the song Northern Attitude?
Maybe
You need to listen
I
to it on
don't
the
know.
way
Okay,
to the
I
bar
will.
that you're going
Okay,
to.
okay, I
You're
will.
gonna be like, oh my god, yeah, this is so
Yeah.
me. He talks about it. He's from like Vermont. And
Yeah.
he talks about how like forgive my northern attitude. Like I grew up in the cold, and I feel like I'd love for you to kind of go into that because we went to the Northeast for the first time this past summer.
Yeah.
Oh my god, this year feels so long.
It does.
And we were like, we love this place. It was
Yeah.
so cool. But talk about growing up in the Northeast.
So the reason why you love it, and like my ex told me this, and I never heard this before. I think he like heard it on a podcast or something. But it made a lot of sense, and I might butcher it, but in the Northeast, we're really tribal people. So like the Northeast has like a lot of really strong like sports cities, like New York, you have the Mets, you have the Yankees. In Philly, like huge sports cities.
Yep.
Like
Then you have
it's
New England,
in New
the
England, like
Patriots,
so
Red
they're very
Sox.
human beings are tribal anyway, but it's something about like back when we colonized the country, like people in that area, everybody, when they started going to like California and migrating out, the North people stayed in that area.
Right.
And so those people are the people that are there. That's why you have like the old Italians that have been there for like so many years. Like we're like very like family, like it's just like that kind of vibe. And so that's why the sports teams are so strong. And I think a lot of people just get this like almost
nostalgia.
Yeah, it's
and
like
I
this
feel like
family
people
vibe.
also learn to like defend themselves up there.
Yes.
They're like, my fucking turf is better than your fucking turf. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah,
you know,
and the way I explain it too, because I lived in Miami and it was like my least. I lived in all of the country. Miami's my least favorite place to live. Very fun to like go and vacation, but do not want to live there. But the way I explained it is like, because people can be rude there and they can be rude in the Northeast. But the difference is if you're walking down the street and you're like there for vacation or something and you're in Miami and you ask somebody like, hey, where's this deli or where's this store? They're going to look at you up and down and then like ignore you and keep walking. In the Northeast, they're going to be like, oh my fucking God, here, it's down the street. You know, there's a really good sandwich. You're going to love it. Ask him, tell him John sent you.
Exactly.
They're going to be annoyed, but they're still going to help you.
Tell Chef Lorenzo John sent you. He'll give you 20% off. Now get the fuck out of my face.
Exactly. And like that's why Philly fans, like we're just annoying, but we're lovable people. And so I think people like, it's definitely that vibe. So I was born in Pennsylvania in Westchester, and then I grew up mainly in Delaware. I lived in Philly for a little bit.
Delaware?
Nothing. That's why I say I'm from Philly, even though technically I'm not, because Delaware's the first state. It's boring. It takes an hour to get from the top to the bottom. Everybody knows each other. Delaware fed, Delaware bred, Delaware fed, Delaware dead. That's what everybody says. Nobody leaves there. It's like there's nothing there.
Fucking
like I don't know.
Delaware, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty boring.
I think I've said the word Delaware 7 times in my entire life.
Yeah, most people have never said it ever. So
isn't there that Dewey Beach place there?
Yeah, so Dewey, Rehoboth, Bethany. That's like where a lot of celebrities have, like Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters.
Shit.
I forget. There's a few other like really, really big like actors that like because nobody goes there. They can hide from people, and people in Delaware don't know anything, so they can just hide there. So I've lived all over the country, and I'll never live there again. But I very much like it being my home. Like I'm going home on Thursday, and I just love being home. But then I like want to be not there. But I like living there.
Delaware.
How ADHD of you, by the way.
Very ADHD.
So Delaware, Philly. And then where?
Well, technically Delaware, Philly, and then LA.
Okay.
And then I lived in New York. I didn't, but my ex lived there. And you know, when you're in a relationship, you're like there every weekend. So like felt like I was there.
City?
He lived in Astoria, and Astoria is my favorite. It's like a hidden gem. Okay. If you're not really from New York, I mean, New York is absolutely massive. Yeah. People do not realize how big New York is. But Astoria is like the suburb version. It's still in the city. Like you can take a subway and get down to like, Times Square in like 20-30 minutes. But it's kind of like a little bit more low key. There's a lot of like, it's kind of like Rhino here in Colorado, but like separate. Like if you're like downtown, it's a little bit different than, I don't know. It's a little bit different. But so I lived in LA, then I moved and then like stayed in New York a bit. Then I moved home. Then me and my ex got a apartment in Philly. So then we lived in Philly again. So Philly, and then we went from Philly to Miami, and Miami to Seattle, and then Seattle to here. So, and that was all because he worked for Capital One, and I owned my own business, and we didn't have kids, and we like to travel. So basically every 18 months we were like, let's live somewhere new.
Right.
So
yeah, I love that.
I need to know the difference between LA and New York. Like, what were they like, and did you like them?
Vastly different.
Yeah.
New York is like the city that never sleeps. It's, even if you're not like you don't go out all the time, there's just this buzz of New York that is just, people are just constantly doing things. There's always something to do. It literally doesn't sleep. Like there's something open all the time. And so New York is just very fast paced. It's, people are just like on the go constantly.
I love that shit.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I love the Northeast, so I'm like, I have a soft spot for it. But LA still, because like New York and LA, they have like that, I don't want to say Hollywood, because Hollywood is more California, but there's still a lot of like famous people and things like that in New York. LA is way more slow paced. People are still doing things, but and the thing I noticed the difference, and this is why I love Colorado so much, and I've loved it for forever, but LA, everybody's nice, but they're fake nice. They're nice to you because you could possibly get them somewhere or whatever. Like I feel like people are just liking you just to pretend to like you.
Opportunists.
Yeah. So I made a lot of friends there, but like never kept any of them.
Yeah.
Like, and since I moved to Colorado, it has been, and I'm a very much like, I will like go to a bar by myself. I'll walk up to somebody. I like will make friends anywhere I go. And it's been so easy to do that in Colorado, which is, I've liked Colorado since I was 15, but like LA or like Miami, impossible to do that. There's like cliques, like high school. I'm like, I can't even get in there.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's a major positive of Colorado.
Yeah.
Every friend that I ever have come and visit, who are all majority from Florida, because that's where we were raised.
Yeah.
They always mention that these are just the nicest people that they've ever,
It really is.
ever kind of come
It's like
across.
considered Midwest, but I don't think it's technically the Midwest.
I was talking to somebody, it might have been you. I talked about this with somebody else. I was like, yeah, Colorado's the Midwest. And they're like, it's the West. And I was like,
It's definitely,
why do people say it's
a
the
lot of
Midwest?
people consider it the
They
Midwest,
do.
but it's not technically like the West.
Right.
It's
I would
like,
consider
it's
it
just,
Midwest for
it's
sure.
just the middle.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I guess
it's
it's
just
more to the
center.
West, but it's like, it's center.
Yeah, it's definitely
Well, I
center.
have to ask because I think New York and LA are so intriguing to me. And we always talk about whenever our kids are grown and we're out of the house, we would love to have a brownstone in New York. When we're like,
what's a brownstone?
like a brownstone? Like a Sex in the City where Carrie Bradshaw lived, like
Like a townhouse.
Like a townhouse,
okay,
like a
yeah.
brownstone.
If you're gonna do that, have it in New York.
And that's what I'm saying.
You have to.
Yeah.
right?
And we
You have
always
to.
say, like, whenever we're old and like gray, we want to be where the city is alive. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want to go to Miami when I'm old and gray. I want to be in like the hustle, the bustle. Like,
New York is rad. The only, and I would live there, but like the constant go is just like a lot.
Yeah.
Even if you're not out, just like there's something, you feel the energy of it. But it's also hella expensive.
Yeah.
It's so expensive, and the tax is really high. I always pay attention because I have my own business of what like the state income taxes, and like that's why living in Florida, I think Florida doesn't have it.
It doesn't.
And then Washington
Yeah,
doesn't
that's
have
why
it
a lot
either,
of
which is nice.
celebrities and like professional athletes flock
like
to
Texas,
at least
Florida,
have their like
Washington.
residence on paper be
Yeah.
in Florida because of the taxes that kind of come through there.
Yeah.
I do have one question as well. Sorry, going back to the whole tough love thing.
I love
because
it. We can talk about it all day
I
long.
think that's like a fucking. I love that topic.
Yeah.
What would you say for like people that are listening? What are the most common scenarios of instances when someone just needs to hear the truth and like getting better from there? Are there any sort of like very high level situations that
Or like an example.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind when you say that and this is whenever I write a book, it's going to be about this is
Right.
like pity party victim mentality type of thing.
Right.
So I was homeless when I moved to LA. I graduated college, moved to LA with this guy I'd been dating. It ended up being an abusive relationship. And I ended up there was this house we were supposed to move into, didn't exist because he was just like lying to get me to move to LA.
Oof.
And so I was homeless.
From New York or from Philly?
From right out of college. So
Right
I
out of
went to
college,
school
okay.
that was like probably 20 minutes from Philly.
Okay.
And so moved there, went to Washington. We got a car off Craigslist for like $200 and then like drove down the coast and moved to LA. And so like the house that we were supposed to have didn't exist. He basically like just tricked me to come there. My parents literally had an intervention and was like, don't go, this guy's abusive. But when you're in an abusive relationship,
Right.
you don't see it until you see
dude,
it.
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was rough, but I was homeless, living out of my car for like 3 months. Like I would shower on the Santa Monica Beach in my bathing suit, like brush my teeth in like Target bathrooms type of thing. So I wasn't like on the street, but definitely didn't live anywhere.
Right.
And I definitely was, and I had a lot of things happen to me. I'm a very big believer that like things can happen to you, no matter like the most traumatic things, but it's still your responsibility to heal from it. It's your
Right.
responsibility to take action from it. You're not responsible for what happened to you. But I very much was just like, my life is so sad and this is so awful, and I was waiting for someone to come save me.
Were you still with that guy through those troubling homeless times?
Some of it, and then eventually I got out of it. So it was like, I'd say half of it was with him, and then half of it wasn't.
I feel like a lot of people, and sorry before you move
No,
on,
you're fine.
a lot of people really find it hard to get out of relationships like this.
It's hard.
Especially, I mean, you must have really, like, this guy got you to move across the country, convinced you he had a spot. Like, you loved the guy. Like,
Yeah,
you were
for sure.
So
I was all up in
How
it.
the fuck did you get out of that?
It was a lot of it.
You're like, I killed him, actually.
yeah,
he's no less.
I probably should have. But it was, so what I was about to share will connect with this. And so when you're homeless, you don't have a job, you don't have anything to do, so you just meet people. And so I forget how I met this person, but they invited us to some like party thing. And I remember we were talking, and I was telling the lady my sob story and how awful my life was, and how I didn't have a job, didn't have any money. And she was like, okay, well, we just opened up this barber shop. We're, looking for people to come in, like sweep hair, help the barbers, things like that. And I was like, well, I don't want to sweep hair. And she was like, so you're telling me you don't have any money, you don't have a job, I'm giving you an opportunity, and it's not what you want to do. And that was like
first tough love session right there.
Yeah, it was like a big wake up call for me. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? Yeah. And so like that was a big wake up call for me. And so on top of that, in February of 2013, I got diagnosed with PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome. I thought I was like going to die, but it wasn't necessarily that. And it's just something that affects like, it can cause infertility. It causes like hair loss, like hormone issues, things like that. And it was the first time, because I was like a kid that never got sick. I never got the flu. I barely ever got the cold, was never in the hospital. And it was the first time anything happened like that. And right at being in the relationship, I was also struggling with 2 eating disorders, was homeless, going through all this stuff, had this wake up call. And I was like, it was kind of like, I think a lot of people can't, I'm getting off on so many tangents, but I truly believe that most people who don't change their life aren't uncomfortable enough, and you need to hit a rock bottom in order, because if you have a plan B, and even if it's not that great, or you have some kind of support even though you don't like it, it's comfortable enough that you can't change. But when you're uncomfortable enough, you have no other choice than to change. And so I was essentially just uncomfortable enough and miserable enough, and then had this like wake up call with this lady who was basically like, I'm giving you an opportunity and you're not taking it. And so like when I got the diagnosis, that's when I was like, okay, all of this stuff together, I got to get out of this. And there wasn't anything like I necessarily did. It was just, I'm going to take control of my life and try to figure this out.
You sort of like woke up.
Exactly.
I interviewed somebody for one of my other podcasts. Her name is Nicole Marilyn, and she was talking about her experience with an abusive relationship. And she said it was sort of like, anybody who is in an abusive relationship can relate to the fact that like you have moments where you peek your head out of the clouds and you can like all of a sudden see, and then you go back down, but then you can all of a sudden see. And she says, pay attention to those moments, listen to those moments, don't ignore them. And it sounds like you kind of had that moment where you came out of the clouds and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. I had a lot of those little moments because I would like talk to friends from home. Like it was crazy when I was going through it. And my mom knows this now because I'm sure she'll probably watch this. But
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. I would, because I've talked about it on social media, to like make sure that people didn't know, one, that I was homeless and that I was like bouncing around from place to place. I would go on Airbnb and pull pictures off the website and send it and be like, this is my place. How nice does it look? Just to like hide. And so like little moments like that, I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Your mom was watching this like, this bitch sent me fucking 7 different freaking cool spots. That she was
different places. Like I'm living all over. I'm just like living my life. But it was like all those moments. And I really think that like it was all the accumulation of all of them. But I think the health diagnosis and realizing that I wanted to heal myself naturally, because they tried to put me on medication that they give to people with diabetes, and I felt like shit, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And so that's when I started being like, I want to try to heal myself naturally. So that's when I got into veganism, and then I learned paleo. And when I started to feel better, I was like, holy shit. Like the thing that went through my mind that I used as like my tagline when I did holistic health coaching was, people don't realize how good their body and mind are designed to feel. Like people are walking around all the time with like major back pain and like constant issues, and they think that I'm just getting old. You don't have to live like that.
Right.
And so when I started to feel better, that's when I was like, I need to help other people feel better too. So
I'm so curious before we move on, because PCOS is something that so many women struggle with, and it's such a high people are diagnosed all the time with it. So when you talk about, you got your degree in holistic health coaching and you did veganism, you did paleo, what was maybe like 1 or 2 things that you think really helped heal you through nutrition?
Yeah. So whenever I get this question, I'm always going to give a really annoying answer, because I think that this is true for literally everything, business too. But like people are constantly looking for that thing that's going to change. So it's like, oh, I learned that if you drink apple cider vinegar in the morning, that's going to change. It's like, that will, but it's not going to change everything. It's the accumulation. And one of my favorite books, The Mountain Is You by Brianna Weiss, she talks about this. She said, it's not the mind-blowing epiphanies that change your life. It's the micro shifts that you make every day. And so there was never one thing that really like changed everything for me. I think if I had to pinpoint something, just like cutting back on, I was also like binge eating and things like that. But I think I could say something like cut back on sugar and like exercise, not in a crazy way. You know, if you're doing a lot of cardio, it's not good for PCOS. You want to do more slow things, more weightlifting, more like, you know, slow moving type of things. But what I really think changed everything was, because stress is the cause of almost all major diseases, like heart disease, things like that, like stroke, heart attack. I think when you start to stop being a dick to yourself, which is so funny. A lot of people think like, oh, tough love coach. Like you don't think I'm going to say this, but people are so used to just like beating themselves up. And I work with a lot of people who struggle with all or nothing thinking. And so they're like, you know, okay, I'm going to do really well for the next 60 days and I'm not going to eat pizza and I'm not going to drink wine. And it's like, that's impossible. You're a human being. Cause then you go 3 weeks without it. And then on day, 30, whatever, you screw it up. And then you're like, oh, now I suck. And it's like, no, what if you just said, oh, I ate a whole box of pizza and drank a bottle of wine. Didn't mean to do that. Mm-hmm. Cool. Just going to show up tomorrow as if I didn't. No big deal. But then we ruminate on it and we beat ourselves up. It's like, and there's reasons why we do that. But I think it was the having some compassion for myself, stop not holding myself accountable, but not being a dick to myself. So then I don't have higher levels of stress,
right,
which causes all the other issues anyway.
Yeah, totally.
Did meditation help you with any of the stress?
Yeah. So one of the things that really helped me was, again, and I have like a whole like freebie that's probably like my most popular thing. It's like how to have a successful morning routine. It's like this free 7-day course on how to do that. And the thing I talk about it is I teach about like meditation, journaling, card pulling, affirmations, things like that. And we think that it's the meditation that's going to help. The meditation does help, but it's not going to be the only thing. Mm-hmm. So like meditation did help, but it was also the journaling. It was also affirmations. It was also doing trauma work. It was also therapy. It was all those things. But meditation definitely is like a huge has a huge effect on like your stress. Even if you're just slowing down, like lowering your heart rate and having a lower heart rate consistently helps reduce stress, which helps reduce like your chance of having a heart attack. So
yeah, and I love that because I think so many people, especially with ADHD, struggle to meditate. Mm-hmm. They struggle to sit there. They struggle to like actually do the thing because they feel like it has to be, sitting in a dark corner with my legs crossed saying Om and like not thinking about anything. And like that doesn't have to be meditation. What are your tips for people who do have ADHD to slow down? Doesn't even have to be meditation, kind of in that same realm. Yeah.
So what you're saying, just to like touch on that, what I teach my clients is like meditation is not being mindless, it's being mindful. And we think that, people will tell me all the time, I'm bad at meditating. So I'm like, as a coach, instead of trying to solve the problem,
that's
I'm like, okay.
I'm like, I don't know how. I'm not good at it.
I know. So then instead of trying to like give them the solution, I say, well, why do you say you're bad at meditation? And they're like, because my mind's racing. I'm like, that's a part of meditation. What meditation is the thoughts come up and you try to like allow them to pass, but not run off with the story. So one of my favorite ways to like help with meditation is like the balloon method theory, where if you are meditating and a thought pops up about work or something like that, and you imagine work or your ex or whatever's coming up, the thing you did in 4th grade, you imagine it encased in a colored balloon. And so you like so it's just a thing versus a story. So I'm thinking about work, so I'm gonna imagine it encased in a red balloon and like let it float away, and then you have to do it again and you have to do it again. And even if you have to think about like 1,000 different balloons, that's actually meditating
for the same thought that comes up
with different thoughts, same thought, whatever. Even if it keeps happening, you watching the balloon float away instead of going off with the story and then you're thinking about a million things.
And that act could be your way of meditating.
That is meditating. You can meditate while walking. You can meditate while driving. It's just like slowing down and observing the thought.
I think that's a great example. So earlier you mentioned all or nothing thinking, and the example you put with it, I'm like, I kind of do that shit.
Everybody does.
Is that why like I'm like so I'll like work out and then I'll go 2 weeks Monday through Friday and I'll work out, and then I'll go, if I miss one day, I'm not in the gym for like another 2 weeks, but I have to start my workouts on Monday too, like the day of the week.
That's very all or nothing thinking. Like people who are like, I'm gonna wait till January 1st. It's like, it's just another day.
Exactly. So I'd love for you to sort of define all or nothing thinking and a few different examples that some people may relate to, and like how you could sort of like work on that. Because I think step one is being conscious of like, oh shit, that's something I can relate to.
Yeah.
How can I be better in that situation?
So all or nothing thinking is essentially like I'm either going to do something like I have to do it all, or I might as well not even bother. And so people will do this with like I work with a lot of procrastinators, and so they'll do this with like getting things done. And so, for example, to use a very simple example, like, you know, maybe they need to like do a project in their house. They need to do laundry. They need to do the dishes or whatever. And so if they don't have the time to do some of it, or they want to just get it all done, then they won't do it until they have time. So they procrastinate until they have time, but we never have time. And so you might as well do it in smaller chunks. I talk a lot about like digestible steps. A lot of people will do this in, like, let's say they need to work on their website. They're like, or like edit a podcast. Like if I can't sit down and do it all in one sitting because I just want to get it all done, right, I won't do it. I want to wait till I can. And so it's very much like this idea that you have to get it all done, and you don't have to. People would stop procrastinating. They'd be more productive if they just did a little bit at a time. So I do this with like, not all my clients struggle with it, but the ones that are really heavy in it, I will tell them, and this is like, even no matter who they are, because when I say it, they're like, what? I'm like, I want you to get a puzzle, like a 1,200 piece puzzle. And because you're going to practice like immersion therapy, what it's like to not do everything. And every night you're going to set a timer. You're going to set a timer for like 15 minutes. I'm not even going to give you an hour. You're going to get like 15 minutes. You're going to do the puzzle, and then you're going to walk away. And they're like, oh my God, I feel like I want to spontaneously combust if I couldn't do the whole, as much of the puzzle as I can.
So 2 years ago, we lived in this beautiful apartment in Lowry, and it was Christmas time, and I get a gingerbread house for me and for him.
A kit of making
gingerbread making house.
Kit.
Yeah.
And I'm literally like, do my thing. I'm like, okay, I think I'm done. Lucas sits there for 3 hours, and he's putting the little jelly beans on like the door, like literally the sidewalk up to the doorway.
He can't leave an unfinished house.
No fucking way.
Yeah, that's all or nothing thinking for sure.
No way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's all or nothing thinking.
I can't leave until I'm like, that's a good.
It's like when you feel like you're going to spontaneously combust if you can't finish it.
Yes.
That also can be related. That could be like a trauma response in the sense of like that constant pressure. And there's so many things it could be related to, but like, one of the things could be just like that constant pressure to like perform. Like my worth is determined by my productivity. If I don't get enough done, I'm not going to feel worthy.
Right.
So I think all or nothing, a lot of what I teach in anything that anybody struggles with, like, whether it's fear of failure, fear of success, perfectionism, I work with a lot of perfectionists and workaholics, is like, instead of just trying to solve the problem by like, a simple solution, which can work, it's like, let's figure out why you have all or nothing thinking. Where did that come from? So I think that's, important to navigate that. But I think with all or nothing thinking is practicing what it's like to do things in digestible steps, because one, you have to feel what it feels like to have your skin crawl and not finish something, but also to practice the habit of doing things in small digestible steps and seeing the results of it, of like, oh, I'm actually not as stressed, and I'm only getting a little bit done, but instead of procrastinating on this and then I don't get it done for 100 weeks, I'm taking only a week or two to get it done when I thought, wanted to do it in a day, but I'm actually getting it done. And then I'm very much about teaching people motivation, where you do something a different way, you realize that a new way of doing it is good and you see results, and then you want to continue to do it that way. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I feel like, man, all or nothing thinking, I feel like that can hit in so many different realms of a human's life, where like, if it's like you get a bag of candy and you have to eat the entire bag of candy, like you can't just set it down. Or one last thing, I think I have that with communicating with my friends, because I have so many long distance relationships with people who are dear friends of mine. If I don't know I have the time to sit down for an hour and actually have because I don't want to text them, I want to call them. And if I know I don't have the time to like have a meaningful conversation, dude, I'll let like some fucking time go, way more time that I really am trying to, or like I won't respond to a text for like a week because I don't have the time to actually give them my full attention. Yeah. Like I hate how I do that,
so the way I always use this example. Anybody who's ever listened to any podcast, someone probably heard me say this like 150 times, but I think it's like the best example, and I'm a big metaphor person. So I teach a lot. I mentioned like my morning routine, like freebie thing. A lot of people want to have a morning routine. They want to have something that they're like, and like they're taking care of themselves, whether it's journaling or meditating or reading. And what people do is they don't have a morning routine because if they end up busy or whatever, or like even working out, like when people go on vacation, they're like, oh, I can't keep my morning routine. I can't keep my vacation because I don't have the time. But instead, and this is the example I use, like for me, my morning routine is like very like precious to me. So it's like a good hour long. And so on a normal day, I will meditate for like maybe 10 or 15 minutes. I'll journal, I'll pull cards, I'll say affirmations. I do a bunch of different things. It takes me like 45 minutes, an hour. On a day where I have to be out the door, I have a doctor's appointment, whatever. What most people will do is, oh, I don't have my hour. I'll just do it tomorrow. Yeah. But I'll say, no, that's all or nothing thinking. I'll meditate. I'll just do deep breathing for 60 seconds. I'll pull one card. I'll journal one sentence because it's about the consistency of progress over perfection of the process is what I say. And so like anything that you notice you're not doing is like how a workout. Maybe you're on vacation, you don't have your normal stuff. That doesn't mean you get rid of it. It means you move your body for 20 minutes. Because if you, I talk a lot about imperfect consistency. If you just keep showing up imperfectly consistent, that will make it, because when we have habits, we create neural pathways in our brain that says, this is what I do. This is why you don't have any willpower to brush your teeth in the morning. You just do it. And so you can create that like, I don't have to think about it, non-negotiable willpower when you just show up imperfectly consistent, you know? So that's why sometimes if you're like trying to message your friends, it's like, maybe I'll just get a quick text out, or yeah, I don't have time to call, but I'll just do that. And then the more you communicate, the more you feel how good that feels. You create self-motivation and you're like, this feels better than waiting 3 months to call my friend.
For sure. So, no, I love that. Love that.
I want to pivot into your business because we obviously have been talking about tough love, but I really want to dive into it. Specifically, what is the recipe to success in your business? Because I think entrepreneurship, I mean, I've had so many friends like dive into entrepreneurship and then go back to 9 to 5, which is, you know, great for some people, but I think it's because of maybe like the fear, and it's because of how difficult it is to actually be an entrepreneur, and how it is all about consistency and preservation. What is it? Preservation. Like it's a lot, and you have to be so devoted. So I want to talk about your recipe. And specifically too, like what is maybe your secret sauce to success in your business, especially with somebody that has ADHD?
Yeah. So I talk about this a lot. I think one of the reasons why entrepreneurs, whatever, if you have a brick and mortar, if you're an online presence, done for you service, product-based business, one of the main reasons that I think people aren't successful is not that the market's saturated. It's not that you can't be successful. I don't care what you're doing. It's that we live in a world that we are so used to instant gratification. We have a phone, we can push a button and we get Uber Eats. We push a button, a car comes and picks us up. We swipe left and right to date. And we're so used to getting everything now. So when people start a business and they don't see that ROI, they don't see success, they don't see what they want immediately, they are like, well, this sucks. And they see other people's 1% highlight reel and don't realize the work that they had to put in. And so I think a recipe for success is, and I went off the other day on my social media. I was like, just because you're not seeing success right now doesn't mean that you can't be successful. And people are so goddamn impatient. I think patience over knowing that like sometimes you're going to show up for a year or two and you're going to be spending more money than you're making. Too fucking bad. You have to be, if you can get over the hump, I have something I teach called the PPC timeline. It's puberty plateau coast. And it's the timeline that I think a lot of people are on in your habits, a new mindset, a new perspective in your business that you kind of go through in order to see success. So the puberty stage is like, I'd say 2 to 4 weeks minimum. Sometimes it's longer, where it's a new thing. It's a new habit. It's a new idea. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. You're not going to remember. It's puberty. And so if you can get over that, where most people stay, you get over that hump where you're consistent enough, you deal with like the ups and downs, and then you start to like have this thing be a habit. It's more natural. And then you get to the plateau stage where, and I use this example like in working out, like usually the puberty stage is where you like don't feel like going to the gym, you don't know what to do, you feel uncomfortable in the gym. And then once you get over that stage and now it's finally more of a habit, you get to the plateau stage where you're showing up consistently, but you're not seeing, because you see a lot of results in the beginning, but then you kind of hit a plateau and you're still making moves, but it feels like you're not going anywhere, so you're stuck at a plateau. But if you keep going through it, and it becomes even more consistent. You show up even when you're not feeling like you have results. Then you get to the coast stage where it's like, this is just me. This is who I am. This is how I show up. And so I think patience, there's so many elements, but I think patience with like what's going to happen, and it's not going to work out. You're going to post something on social media and nobody's going to give a shit. You're going to post a podcast and you're going to get one download. Who cares? You're going to have to continue to show up even if no one's paying attention to what you're doing, and eventually someone will. But people don't want that. They want the lifestyle, but they don't want the work it takes to get there.
Right. It's like all the superstars selling out arenas today.
Yeah.
Every single one of them can tell you a story about how they performed in front of like 3 people.
Exactly.
Right?
And people don't want that. They want to skip that stage. That's the puberty stage. And everybody wants to skip it, and you can't skip it. That's the only reason why people aren't successful. It's not that they can't. It's most people give up. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme where it's like the guys, he's digging with like the
diamond.
Yeah.
Fuck,
and
dude,
he's like right there, and then he gives
saved
up.
in my photo for sure.
That's the reason why most people aren't successful, because they haven't seen it yet, and then they give up before they see success.
But also I think in that same breath, today is the day and age where, you know, we see people get fucking famous off of one video.
That's where it fucks people up.
That's where it fucks people up, because they're like, there is that chance to
they want to
skip
be
that stage.
They want to be that.
But I will say, anybody that I've seen who's gotten famous off of one video hasn't been sustainable with it.
Yeah. Or this is the thing that people don't pay attention to. They didn't see what they did before that. They just happen to have something go viral. And so a lot of times people are like doing some things behind the scenes, or they made some connections, or they had some conversations, and that viral video is what they noticed. But there was stuff that was going on behind the scenes, but nobody saw it. You know what I mean? But there definitely are people that like do that, and then they don't know how to sustain it. And I talk about this a lot too. Like there's a big difference between like knowing what to do for your business. Like if you are really good at coaching people, if you know how to create a product, there's a difference between doing your craft and knowing how to run a business. And a lot of people do not know how to run a business at all.
Well, and I would love to know some of your tips there, because I think, something that I noticed with you is like, you're so good at creating content. And I think that's like probably, I'm guessing, how you've built a lot of your success is through social media. And I think people can either use that as an excuse of like, oh, I don't know how to do social media, or capitalize on that shit and run with it. So for you, talk about maybe like how you run a business, but then also like how you have used social media to really like get some of your success.
Yeah. So there was something, I forget what you said earlier, but it made me think of this, and now you're reminding me of this again. But one of the pillars of my coaching is teaching people how to run a business in a way that works for them. There's a lot of stuff on social media right now, especially from like business coaches that are like, here's the secret way to make $10,000 in 3 days.
Yeah.
Totally.
And while that process might work, not everybody works the same. If you have somebody who is neurodivergent and has ADHD or OCD or whatever, and then you have somebody who's neurotypical who doesn't have the same brain, they're not going to function the same. Like people with ADHD could give you another symptom is like, we do not like too much structure. It makes us feel caged in. So if I have like a calendar that has like a bunch of things and an exact time, I'm like, oh my God, I want to throw up. I am not the person that's going to have a content calendar built out for 3 months. Absolutely not. It makes me feel super caged in, but some people have like color coded. They plan. And that works for you. Yeah. And then you should do that. But there's some people that like that, and then they teach that thinking that that's what's going to work for everybody. If somebody taught me that, I'd be like, absolutely fucking not.
Totally.
There's no way I want to do that. So I think to be successful in business is to find the way, or have someone help you, to help you figure out, how do I like to do business? How do I like to structure my schedule? How do I like to create content? Some people batch content. They'll like plan it out and then they'll record it and they have stuff ready to go.
Right.
I used to do that, wanted to rip my hair out. Not everybody likes that.
We try to do that with this podcast.
Yeah. Like you do want to have some structure. You don't want to completely wing it, because you can do that for a bit, but eventually if you want to get to the next level, you're going to have to do it. But again, in a way that works for you.
But I think something that you said was so spot on, because I feel like I've been trying to do social media since like 2015. I had a blog, but I didn't really take it seriously until 6 months ago, when I realized, oh, I don't need to show up perfect all the time. I just need to show up. And you said like even showing up imperfectly and being consistent with it.
Right.
And I think that's what I realized. And that's why I hate batching. Cause like I will plan out my content, like what I'm going to record, but I will record when I feel like the creativity there, or when it's that day. Yeah. And that works for me. It's not going to work for everybody, but I also feel like if I were to batch them before, it just feels too like I'm trying to be perfect.
Yeah. And then sometimes you lose like the energy around the post.
Right.
And so I have a lot of people who have like tons of drafts and then they never post it because they're like trying to, create it. And if you are somebody who doesn't have the time, you're a parent, you're working 17 jobs, and maybe you do need to batch, but that's why you figure out there's so many elements to like how how a person's brain works, what their life is like, what season they're in, that will dictate how they show up. But I think one of the things that has worked for me, and I think anybody can be good at social media, but there are people that are just born naturally charismatic or they're comfortable in front of a camera. I've been that way. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would like, be recording me on like the old, like, video camcorder. And like in the middle of the video, I'd be like, can we watch this when we're done? But I just like light up on a camera. So I
like flip the screen around, flip it around. I want to see.
I need to see myself. So I think I've always been comfortable. Now, when I went through my abusive relationship, I did become a shell of a person. And so when I actually started my Instagram when I was mint chocolate vegan and like fitness videos, all of that, especially if you see me now, like I don't shut the fuck up. I would cut off like my head. I wouldn't like in pictures. I wouldn't like talk on camera. I didn't want anybody to see me. So I had to rebuild my confidence again. Cause when I was a kid, I was like that in high school, college. And then I got in this relationship, like became a shell of a person and had to find it again. But I think that one of the reasons people come to work with me, and I talk about this, like I think it's in my bio, something about like authentic, your authentic voice, is I help people like show up authentically, show up in their unique way. And if you're loud, if you're weird, if you're introverted, like you need to embrace that. Like just because you're quiet, like you're going to maybe work with other quiet people, like, depending on like what your business is. But I think it's like embracing exactly who you are and not trying to fit into a box because you think it's going to go viral. Like I know my tough love is probably a reason why I don't have like 500,000 followers because not everybody likes it. And I'm okay with that. Like, I don't want to work with somebody that like is going to cry immediately if I like give them like the slightest bit of constructive criticism.
I think it will catch. I think you will get to 500,000 because
I definitely will at some point.
I think we live in a very sensitive time right now.
Yeah, we do.
But I'm not even like worried about that. Like I'd rather have 500 followers that vibed the fuck with me versus like 100,000 that like kind of only liked like one post I made.
Amen to that.
I have a question because I think we can talk about like success all day long, but what does success actually mean for you?
Success for me definitely means I love seeing people have light bulb moments go off with me. Like I of course, like I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make money. Like I love money. Like I'd love to make money and be successful. But for me, what feels like the most successful is like I'm having an impact. And like my job as a coach is not to fix people. Right. I'm supposed to just guide them there. I'm never going to like fix someone's problems. But when I chat with somebody, because people will sometimes ask me when they're interested in working with me, like what makes you different from other coaches? Like I'm coach shopping. What's going to make you different? I feel like I innately have this superpower where I can ask people questions that they've never been asked before. Right. And just by asking them that question, they're like, holy shit, I never thought about it that way. So I think I just have, and I'm really able to read through people's bullshit. Like people who are telling me like, oh, I've like tricked my therapist for like 5 years, and then they get in a room with me and they're like, and they like open up about something they've never opened up before about. And so I feel like being able to essentially have light bulb moments for people, and that alone is like the micro shifts I was talking about earlier. If I can help someone have a micro shift that like just launches them into success, like that to me is like the most rad thing. Like that's what helps me feel fulfilled, essentially.
Something that we ask a lot of our guests, and it's something that I feel like we've touched on a few times in the episode, is tell us about a time where you burned the dish, because we think that so many people,
metaphorically or actually
metaphorically,
I burn it all the time. We go through so many pans, but like
so many pans,
literally. Again, like we were talking about, people see overnight success and they don't see the work, the failures, the things that were, behind all of that success. So maybe if you can touch on a time where in career or in business, you burned the dish and then learned a lesson from it.
I burn the dish every day.
Yeah.
Like all the time. And that's it's funny that you talk about that, because I talk about this a lot. Is the fear of failure. And I have a mastermind going on right now. It's a 6-month mastermind called Fuck the Fear of Failure. And I work with a lot of perfectionists and workaholics, as I mentioned earlier. So for me, I've never used the word burn the dish, but like I teach people to purposely burn the fucking dish. Burn it. so you can see what went wrong. People are trying to avoid failure and trying to avoid trial and error so much that it's like success leaves clues. The master has failed more times than the student has ever even tried. And so the more you burn the dish, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't. So I love that, you're talking about this, but like, I've failed so many times. I've had launches that like nobody joined. I've had posts that like, just completely flopped. I do that shit all the time. I have spelling errors in almost every single one of my posts. And I like people will comment on it. And I'm like, did you still get the point? Did you still embrace it?
It's still
like,
engagement.
Yeah, it is. And so like, and I still try to like, I hate using the word professional because I don't consider myself professional. I know how to do my job and I know how to run my business, but like, I'm not going to go out of my way to make sure that everything I'm putting out is like the most perfect thing ever. And I like to give a recent example is to like be super vulnerable. I knew it was going to be vulnerable when I did it, and I probably shouldn't have done it at the time, but I did this challenge to myself because there's this book called We Should All Be Millionaires by, I forget her name. I'm terrible with names, but I think it's like Rebecca or Rachel something.
Is that an ADHD thing, by the way?
What? To forget
names?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, dude.
Oh, terrible.
I
with names.
am so bad with names.
Oh, I'm really good with
makes
faces.
Me feel so guilty.
I know. You know the best way to remember someone's
Fucking
name?
Please. Oh, a famous person.
Well, if you're like just forgetting someone's name, but let's say you meet someone and you're like, wait, what is? Not that. Not that. No, but it definitely could work. But so like if you're with someone and you forget their name, it's like, can you tell me how you spell your name?
Oh,
and then
love
they spell
that.
it.
Yeah,
but then if their name's like Matt,
Sarah,
it's like, ooh.
Yo,
well,
this goes so far back for me too. Even when I was a little kid, I used to like try to come up with. I tell Amanda this, and I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I used to be like, hey, do you want to play the stupid game? You used to play like the stupid game back in the day. You'd ask like stupid questions. I don't know. Maybe you've never heard this.
Yeah, we did.
And I'm like, what's your name?
That's a good one.
And they'd be like, Matt. And I'd be like, yeah, so you know your name. And I'd be like, all right, his name was Matt.
I don't think that could work as an adult, but it definitely could work as a kid.
No,
for
like
sure.
I had to
You've
come up with tactic. No, I told you that. Come on. Come on, I told you.
I love that.
I know the stupid game, but I've never heard that.
But yeah, sorry,
That's
total
smart.
side note there.
Yeah,
But
we're just going off on a tangent.
Terrible.
What were we talking about?
The book. We were talking about a book. You burn the dish. You're getting vulnerable.
Oh yeah. So we should all be millionaires. At the end of the book, she challenges you to make 10K in 10 days. And so I've been wanting to do it for a while. And so I planned stuff. Didn't realize now I didn't plan enough like I should. And so I started it. I announced it on social media. I said, this is what I'm doing. I had like 3 launches going on at the time. And I started it. And I realized that like I just wasn't, not that I wasn't built for it, but like it was too overwhelming for my nervous system. I had to do too many things. There were too many things on the back end. And it wasn't that it wasn't going well. I just like wasn't as prepared for it as I needed to be. And I was too overwhelmed by it. So I made a post on social media, and it's because everybody was like, you got this, Alexis. You're going to make more than 10K. And I was like, guys, I'm not doing this anymore. And I just stopped like 6 days in, and I was like, I can't, it's giving me anxiety. Like I didn't prep enough, blah, blah, blah. And I just like told people that, and people eat that shit up. And not that I'm doing it for that purpose, but they're like, this is why I love you, Alexis. The fact that you're literally, because like people are doing business stuff all the time and they're failing at it, and then they don't say anything.
Right.
And like, that is me. And I'm like always very open and vulnerable. That's why I went through a divorce. I was like, yo guys, I got married 18 months ago. I'm getting a divorce. So yeah,
Okay,
there it is.
We need to talk about that too before we go into the food thing.
That's a burn the dish, I guess. But like,
Yeah, talk about your divorce, because again, you said you were married for 18 months. We were talking off camera about how you had like a big wedding, and then I was like, we need to stop. We need to save this for the podcast. So talk about that. Like, when did you meet your ex?
So we went to high school together, dated each other's best friends, absolutely no interest in each other. He just like wasn't my type. He had like a buzz cut, and I wasn't into that. And like, I don't know, we just like weren't into each other. Then we went to college and like stayed in contact through like the occasional tweet. And then the classic go home for Thanksgiving, go to the bar that everybody goes to. And I saw him, he had like lost like 75 pounds because he's an offensive lineman. He was like 315. He was like 250. I was like, what? He had a full head of hair, and I was like, you just, Pat, is this you? And
You're like, why are you hot now?
Yeah, basically. I was like, oh. And so we just like connected, and then we just started like hanging out, and like essentially became like best friends. But he like, we always joke, he like friend zoned himself. I gave him so many hints that like, hey, I like you. We like went out to like see a DJ or something, and I went like back to his house, and like we were sitting on the couch. He was like, all right, I'm gonna go to bed, and like went upstairs to his room, and I'm just like sitting on the couch like, okay, I guess like he's really not like catching any signs, whatever.
Wow.
And so I moved back to LA because I was living in LA for a little bit, came home, and then my sister wanted to go to fashion school out there. So we moved back out there. And that's when he was living in New York. I was living in LA. And I it was like the situation where like, this is my best friend. I like him. Am I going to tell him I like him and I'm going to ruin the friendship? Or is he going to like me too? And so I typed up this whole message and my sister like hit send for me because I couldn't. I know. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the worst. And so he eventually messaged me back. He was like, yeah, I feel the same way. We were Skyping before Zoom was a thing or FaceTime. We were Skyping every night. And so we just like hit it off. And then like 4 months later, I moved back to Philly. We got an apartment together. We got a dog. And then we just like stayed together ever since. And like we had like, it was definitely rough throughout the 9 years of us, being together. And then like things just like, we essentially felt more like friends than we did like lovers. Right. There was like not as much like romance intimacy type of thing, which was like the reason. And so people might be like, why didn't you end it earlier? But when you're like best friends, which like you should be, like it seems like you guys are best friends, like when you're best friends in a relationship, that's what you want.
Right.
And so it was so hard for us to walk away from a best friend situation but like also be in a relationship. So that's kind of like how it went down in a nutshell.
So after 9 years, you guys get married or engaged? When did that happen?
So we were together since 2014, and then we got engaged in 2017, and then we got married in 2021.
So you guys waited a while to get married. Was that like calculated, or just kind of how it happened?
I was never like the girl that was like, where's the ring? But I think because we had a lot of ups and downs, like I think every year since the first 2 years were fine, but every year past the first 2 years, once a year we would have like okay, this isn't going to work. Like where we like have the argument, have the fight. We wake up in the morning and we're like, okay, who's going to take the dogs? When am I going to move out? And then we like made it work again. And we just kept trying. And that's like why I think we stuck with it. And like eventually we decided that it wasn't going to work because we really did put a lot of effort into trying to make it work. But I think there wasn't really any reason. We just weren't really in a rush. And we like, neither of us wanted kids either. So we were just kind of like, I don't know, doing our thing. And then like in terms of when we got engaged, because we got engaged in it wasn't 2017, it was 2019. So we waited like 2 years to get married. That was literally just money because we were paying for it ourselves. And it was a really expensive wedding. So
do you think a lot of people stay in relationships that they probably should or maybe wanted to get out of way earlier, but kind of just keep it around? And if you do think that way, like what are some ways to help people maybe get out of that situation if they were asking for help?
It's a tough one. I think I don't want to say like the majority of people, but I think there's a lot of people that are I just saw a stat on I think it's Sex with Emily is her page. Yeah, she's awesome. It said, I don't know if it was her or somebody else, but it said like 56% of people are like unhappy with like the intimacy in their relationship, and like intimacy is just like a big thing. And I think a lot of people just settle because it takes effort to like end it. Then you got to get back into the dating scene, and am I going to find someone? And I think, so I do think a lot of people do that, and they're also afraid of divorce and they're afraid of being alone. And so I think a lot of people stay because they're not comfortable with themselves. Because if you're really comfortable with yourself, even though it's sad to leave a relationship, like, you're going to figure it out. And so when you start to become more comfortable with yourself, then you're like, okay, I think I can do this. But I think there's not a really like clear cut or like direct answer of like what to do. Cause that was what I struggled with, is like, okay, I'm not happy, and my ex wasn't happy, but it was scary to like walk away from it. And I think the most important thing is like, somebody said to me, no good marriage ever ended in divorce. And so if you feel like what you have is something that you're having major doubts about, and you've like, give it a bunch of tries. Cause that's the thing that I think for us, we were like, if I can feel like we tried everything we could and it's still not working, that is enough like comfort and like solace to be like, okay, there's nothing else I can do.
Right.
If you don't give it any effort, you're not going to know. You're going to have that question in the back of your mind. Is it going to work? So I think it's like, give it the work, go to couples therapy, work on your fucking self, work on yourself. Cause we did couples therapy first. And I had always been like doing this work anyway, but we went to couples therapy. And that helped a little bit. But then we realized like, this isn't like just a couples thing. This is an us thing. So then, you know, we were working more on ourselves. We both like went to separate therapists and it still didn't work. So I think if you can put the effort in, if you're having the doubts, that's one thing. But if you put the effort in and it's still not working, like you have to be able to choose yourself. Like you have to. And that's the biggest thing. It's not about the relationship. It's about choosing yourself, me choosing me and him choosing him. And now we're like both way happier. And even just because our relationship now feels more like it did, and we don't like, it's not like we're like best friends, but it feels like this is probably what it always should have been. We should have just stayed friends, which I don't regret it because I wouldn't be in Colorado if I didn't. So it kind of had to happen, but
Right.
yeah.
I'm curious because obviously I don't think you go into a wedding thinking I'm going to get divorced. So I'm curious, like, how did you even reconcile in your head, like 18 months later after this beautiful wedding, like, I want to get divorced? Like, I bet that was also a hurdle to get over.
Yeah, it was that, and I've tried to remind myself that like just because you had a wedding, that does not need to be the reason that you stay in a marriage, like at all. Like even with kids, like obviously that's 10 times harder. But like if you talk to anybody of divorced parents, they're like they wished their parents got divorced way sooner,
sure.
you know?
For
and
sure.
so like staying together for the kids is not like a thing that benefits them. It's like ending it is going to be way healthier because most likely the dynamic is like creating way more trauma. But I think like I had to remind myself exactly what I just said is that just because I had the wedding, just because we spent a shit ton of money on it, just because our friends were there and like, yeah, your friends come and they give you money. And I was like thinking that like, oh my God, my friend just, you know, gave us money for the wedding and then they're going to, but none of that matters. I matter. Mm-hmm. It's like, I think it very much just had to come down to my own happiness. And same with my ex, you know, I can't speak for him, but like I had to choose myself over the money I spent on the wedding, my friends, what people would think, like, cause okay, let's stay in the marriage. So my friend Jessica can like not be mad that she gave me $100 for the wedding. Like it just like, it wasn't necessary. And I knew I had to put my happiness first and like, love my ex. Doubt he's going to listen to this, but if you do, love you. I'm so much happier now. And I know he's the same too. And it has nothing to do with him, you know, it's specifically, it's more of just, I'm choosing myself and I'm doing like what feels best for me. And like, that's hard to do, but that's why you have to work on yourself because you can't get to that point without working on yourself.
What do you think getting divorced gave you?
Peace of mind, freedom, knowing, really like creating a relationship with myself that like was being blocked by spending so much time and energy on trying to fix something that like just couldn't be fixed. Some people just aren't meant to be together and that's okay. And I was just spending like all of my time was spent like going back and forth between like, should I be here? Should I not? Like, and so now that I have that peace of mind, I have so much more like headspace. Yeah. Free time to like work on my business, work on myself. Because
there's so much room for activities
literally in my brain physically. So I think it's just gave me a new outlook on like me and who I am. Like not that like my ex never didn't let me be myself, but like I'm able to just have just a totally different outlook on my relationship with myself. And so I think that would be it for sure.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're talking about it because I think it has such a stigma and it is kind of taboo. And I think it shouldn't be because if you're in a relationship that you're unhappy in, I guarantee the other person is too. And like, what are you guys doing that for? So I'm so happy that you're talking about that. But because this is What's the Recipe, we need to talk about actual food.
I love food, so let's do it.
And I think the first question I want to ask you is, what is your favorite meal of the day? So either breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Breakfast, easily.
I knew you were going to say breakfast because you love your morning.
Yeah, breakfast. But to me, breakfast food is the best, and I don't care how late I eat. I mean, I typically eat in the morning, but if I'm eating at 2:00, it's still going to be breakfast food. My first meal has to be breakfast food, no matter what time of day. I tell him that
all the time.
And always
the first thing that comes into my mouth has to be like an avocado toast, eggs, pancake, like oatmeal.
Egg hoe. Yeah. I love eggs so much.
I could start my day with like spaghetti bolognese. Like
never.
No.
Last question before we wrap up. Could you share like a go-to recipe with our listeners? Something that you either love to make or maybe like has been in your family, just a go-to recipe.
I don't have like a big, we're not a big family recipe person because my mom had me in the kitchen since I was like 3. I was going to go to culinary school. I love cooking so much, but I'm like very much self-taught cook. So we don't have anything cool like that, but there's 2 recipes that come to mind. One is this buffalo chicken dip, but it's a healthy version and I make it all the time and people love it.
Love buffalo chicken dip.
but like
immediately need it.
it's so like most buffalo chicken has like sour cream and cheese, and obviously like those are really rad, but I like to make one that like I can eat every Sunday and not feel like I'm gonna like, you know, vom. And so it's just like you make like chicken, I make it in the air fryer, of course, shred it up, but you use I use Sir Kensington's mayonnaise, which is like a better mayonnaise instead of sour cream, instead of cheese, but I use that. And then just hot sauce, a lot of different like spices like garlic powder, paprika, salt, pepper, things like that. And then I use like nutritional yeast. And then if you have like dairy-free cream cheese, you can use that in there too. And then I literally just put, except for the chicken, all of it in a blender and then pour it over the chicken and heat it up, and it's fine. It's like very simple recipe.
Love
but
that.
The other recipe, and I make it like every Sunday during football, but the other recipe that I recently figured out that I'm like addicted to, I don't know if you guys like have ever been to or go to music festivals or anything like that.
I've been to Coachella, but I don't
like
know
rave music festivals,
any of them.
Yeah.
But there's this company that's really big at like most music festivals called Island Noodles, and it's so fire. It like comes in like this like Chinese takeout thing, but I recently discovered like a recipe, and I make this sickening. I probably eat this for dinner like 4 times a week. So
I love that.
So Costco and Whole Foods, I think, has like these gluten-free ramen noodles. It's like this red bag, and they have like ramen noodles. It's really good. So you have to have the ramen noodles. That's important. But the sauce, so you just put like garlic, like chopped up garlic in a pan. Then you put coconut aminos instead of soy sauce, coconut cream, so like maybe like half a cup, maple syrup, and sriracha, so that makes like the sauce.
Absolutely.
And then you put like whatever veggies you want, broccoli, peppers, onions, and then I make really good chicken, but it's just chicken thighs, and you make it air fryer 330 for 21 minutes. Then you chop that up, and you mix the ramen noodles in with the chicken thighs, and then that sauce and the peppers and stuff.
That sauce sounds delightful.
It's literally
like
just
spicy, but then the maple syrup comes in.
Yes,
it's
just literally garlic, coconut cream, maple syrup, sriracha, and if you have like sesame oil and things, you can add stuff like that. But like that sauce, and then like you cook it a little bit longer so it thickens up. Oh, it's so good. I eat it like 4 times a week.
Also, we are such chicken thigh over like chicken breast people.
It's not as healthy, but it's
way
better.
We're chicken thigh whores.
Also,
for
did
sure.
you just say syrup instead of syrup?
It's syrup.
It's syrup.
Who I say?
You said syrup. You said maple syrup.
Maple syrup. I don't know. I think I say both.
I say syrup.
How I feel about
I'm a big syrup guy.
Sometimes I'll say caramel, but I think I always.
I feel like to me it feels like there's a difference.
I say caramel.
To me, caramel are caramel candies, but caramel is like caramel sauce.
Oh, no.
I don't know if there's a difference.
Caramel macchiato, yeah.
You'll never hear me say.
You wouldn't say caramel macchiato.
I say caramel. Can I get a caramel macchiato?
Nah.
I don't say caramel, bro.
No.
Hell no.
Okay.
That's great.
So what do you call that meal? That last
Well,
meal?
I don't call it anything, but it's similar to Island Noodles, like at a festival. And like if people are watching this and they know, they're like, I know Island Noodles.
Okay.
Island Noodles are fire.
Your sister probably knows Island Noodles.
She definitely knows
Island Noodles are fire.
Yeah. You're gonna have to give us the recipe so we can put it in the.
Yeah, we're gonna make it. We're gonna cook it.
I'll give you both.
And then we're gonna put it in our captions.
It's pretty fire.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's fire.
Okay.
So before we wrap up, where can people find you if people want to work with you? What's something you're excited about that you're doing right now? Give us the spiel.
So I'm the Tough Love Coach pretty much everywhere, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. I have a podcast called XOXO, Your Tough Love Coach. And it's very much more so short form. Of course, I have like some longer episodes, but most of them are kind of like your Monday morning kick in the ass. Like I try, again, some episodes have it, but I try not to be too like, here's more information. I think we live in information overload right now. And so it's more of like the tough love on the topic versus information on the topic, even though some of them have that. So that's my podcast. And I'm like mainly on Instagram. So if you want to work with me, like I answer my DMs, shoot me a DM. I work with people one-on-one. I have something called the Tough Love Collective, which is kind of just like an open like group mentorship where you can join for as long as you want. There's like trainings. It's for entrepreneurs who want to like figure out how to run a business in a way that works for their brain. They want support because I don't just do business coaching. I also do like the internal work, a lot of like, you know, the pity party stuff, all of that in there as well. And I have a lot of stuff coming. I can't really share anything for like the new year, but
stay tuned, guys.
But my word for 2024 is embodiment. I think there's a big difference between like coaches are coming into the scene essentially, and they'll have like, I don't know, they go on like a mushroom eating retreat and they're like, oh my God, my life has changed. And they're like out there just coaching people. And there's a difference between knowing what to do and understanding. And we learn so much on social media and TikTok. And it's like, just because you hear an idea that you really resonate with does not mean that you've embodied it. Just because somebody shares something and you're like, oh my God, that's really changed my life, I can do that. You can't just go out there and teach people. You have to embody it. You have to sit with it. You have to fail at it. And then you can go and, teach it. I think that that's true for parents. I think that's true for anybody. Like, you really have to practice. You don't have to be perfect at it, but you have to really embody it. So a lot of like, I'm going to have like a mastermind. I'm going to have a lot of like workshops and things.
But for anybody listening, definitely go check out her podcast, because I love that you do like talk about digestible things. It's like 6 to like 15 minutes long, and it's perfect if anybody doesn't want to like listen to a lengthy one, just like something short in the beginning of their day. Like, definitely go listen to it.
Yes, please do. Thank you so much for being here tonight. It was a absolute pleasure getting to interview you. Okay, so when we wrap up these podcasts, we like to say it's 86. So if you will, can you look at the camera and just say this episode is officially 86?
This episode is officially 86.
Yay.
Don't